Hello and welcome to I guess the sports directors. You've got the sports reporters, but we're taking a step up here. We're going with the sports directors. Kevin McCrary from South Carolina Radio Network and sportstalksc.com. Chris Lepley from the Michigan Radio Network and Bill Scott from the Wisconsin Radio Network. And today we're going to talk about baseball. The designated hitter, does it need to belong in the National League? And Bill, I'll start with you because the commissioner of baseball, the new commissioner, Robert Manfred Jr., was in St. Louis at Busch Stadium for the series opener between the Brewers and Cardinals. And he was talking with the local media. And this was kind of interesting because I'm an old school guy. And I've been, kind of stuck in my ways when it comes to baseball, and I was resistant to things like instant replay, but I'm kind of changing a little bit, but it looks like things may stay status quo. He was asked about adding the designated hitter in the National League. We'll play his comments, and then we want to hear from everybody else.
I am not a believer that there needs to be a consistent policy for both leagues. I don't have a lot of dissonance about the fact that the American League plays one way and the National League plays the other. I think it's a topic that people like to debate. I think that's a good thing for the game. When people are talking about the game, that's a good thing for the game. I'm perfectly content with the status quo.
All right, so Bill, we'll start with you. You're in Wisconsin. You cover the Brewers National League team. At one time was an American League team. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm kind of mixed. I'm on both sides of the fence. I lean towards keeping the National League with the traditional style, not using the DH. That would be the direction I lean. I grew up a National League fan. Even though I lived in Wisconsin all my life, I've always been a Cubs fan. So shoot me now, all right? I think what I don't like about the National League and allowing pitchers hit is the fact that they go through the minors for such a long period of time using the DH even in National League organizations, so these pitchers don't get a lot of hitting time, and then by the time they hit AAA, and if they're any good, they're in the majors, at a certain time fairly quickly, and they're just not very good hitters, and I think it brings the game down a little bit. Having said that, I'm a traditionalist in terms of fundamentals. I love the bunting aspect of the game, and it's gotten to the point where if pitchers aren't doing the bunting, there's no bunting anymore. They've taken away that aspect of the game in the National League for the most part. So you can see I'm kind of riding the fence here. I really don't have a strong opinion one way or another. If I had a vote, I'd say keep it in the National League.
Chris Lepley, who covers the Detroit Tigers for the Michigan Radio Network. You're the only American League guy here that we can talk to about this. But doesn't the American League, though, have an advantage with the designated hitter? I mean, they've got more. It seems like they have more power. It seems like they have more pop. They have the ability to score more runs. You look at the All-Star game. I think there's been advantages there. What are your thoughts?
Especially, those guys, they don't play any position, so basically all they do is hit. So it takes away, more of them getting hurt. But I think the National League should adapt the designated hitting. For instance, when the Tigers played the Cardinals and Shane Green, he's dying to hit. I mean, he's a pitcher, but he came out and hurt his wrist, and he had to come out of the game. And they go Adam Wainwright, injured for the rest of the year. Is their star pitcher. So I think to avoid some injuries and maybe have more longevity with the pitchers, I think they should do the DH. But I'm traditional, and I do like what they do, but I think it'd be a good change for them. And I think to get both the leagues on the same level would be good.
All right. Kevin McCrary from South Carolina. I think there's a lot of Braves fans down there, but if they're not using footballs, really, are people even interested in this at all down there?
Oh, Braves country's big here in South Carolina. The Braves are big time in this part of the world. But I'm a traditionalist too. I don't have a problem with the designated hitter. It makes sense on a lot of levels of baseball, and even in the American League. It gives guys a place to go if they want to extend their career. If pitchers, like Chris said, are worried about the wear and tear of batting 3 or 4 times a game, really probably less than that, then they can always sign with an American League team. But I like the strategy involved in the NL game with the pitcher hitting. You got to decide if you want to leave him in the bat or take him out of the game. I mean, it makes it a lot more difficult for a manager. And if you're playing in an NL park, you're playing by those rules. You play in an AL park, you play by those rules. So it's never like one team has a DH and the other team doesn't. So, I don't have a major issue with it in that regard. And I do think it should stick around. I thought the commissioner, my favorite quote from him was the quote about Bartolo Colon. If we didn't have the, pitchers batting in the National League, we wouldn't get to see Bartolo Colon step into the plate, and that's always that's entertaining. Or Madison Bumgarner taking Clayton Kershaw deep a couple of weeks ago. Kershaw, he had 3 hits a couple of nights ago. I mean, I think it's kind of cool to see the pitchers go up there. I love it when an AL guy gets traded to the NL and he has to take that first at bat that he's ever had, and he looks ridiculous up there. I don't have any problem with the way it's set up now. It's been working fine. I like the debate. I mean, I agree with the commissioner. It's good to have that kind of debate. Or should John Olerud be in the Hall of Fame, even though he was a DH most of his career? I mean, or I guess Edgar Martinez was the other one that really had the long DH career. And people can debate that all they want, but I think it's perfect just the way it is. They don't need to change that.
You talk about pitchers moving over leagues and looking foolish, and Bill, you're the Cubs fan. We talked about this on a hangout earlier. I grew up in Chicago. I'm a Cubs fan. John Lester's the perfect. What is he? 0 for 58. He's the worst. He's the worst hitter ever. Kevin, I go with your point.
Could one of us, do you think, if we had 58 cracks at it against big league pitching, do you think any of us could muster like a hit?
I think out of the 4 of us, somebody should be able to, scratch out a hit, broken bat, something. Right.
You know what? I did see one of the previous Cub games though when Lester was hitting, and I saw the guy go the opposite field and hit 2 line drives right at guys. So while he is over 58 or whatever he is, I think he's a better hitter than what the 0 for indicates. And I'm a traditionalist with this too. I like the strategy, but I was thinking about this the other day after I heard the commissioner, and I think the way that pitchers are used now has changed from 15, 20 years ago, even longer than that. When guys would actually finish their whole game and they would pitch 9 innings, that's where some of that strategy came in when you got into the late innings of the game. But you never see a closer bat. You never see middle relievers bat. It's always the starting pitcher. And really, for the most part, these guys are going 5, maybe 6 innings, and now they're calling these things quality starts. They're maybe only getting 2 at-bats. And by the time his spot comes around in the order in a late game situation, bottom of the 6th, 7th inning, and it's his 3rd time up, he's done anyway. He's reached his 100 pitches. So I've actually changed on this and said, you know what, instead of bringing that pitcher spot up twice, why don't we go back and just put the DH in there, and it gives the National League 2 more at-bats, 2 more quality at-bats, and then what you might see is those situations where you've got a pitcher who's doing really well who might stay in and extend to the 7th or 8th inning, or maybe even a complete game. For 2 at-bats a game, I think for the fan standpoint, as you look at the health of baseball in general and finding some excitement back to it, I think putting another hitter in the game could help, especially now that run production is on its way down. So final thoughts, Bill,
anybody.
I'll go back to. I have 2 points. One, I'll go back to last night's game against the Cardinals. Tyler Cravey gave up a run in the 2nd inning in his rookie debut, major league debut for the Brewers, and with pitching into the 8th and had a low pitch count and would have still been allowed or would have been able to pitch had the Brewers scored a run for him. Had it been at least a tie game, or if the Brewers had a 1-run lead, but because they needed offense, they had to pinch hit for him and go to the bullpen. So I think that's kind of proving your point about going to a DH and getting more quality at bats. It does allow, however, I think the National League uses its bench a lot more because of the fact that these guys are constantly pinch hitting for pitchers. In the American League, I don't know that these teams are using their bench quite as extensively on a night in and night out basis. My other point about the commissioner is it's going to be interesting to see, and this is kind of a blanket statement covering more than just the DH, but it's going to be interesting to see where he comes down on a lot of issues, because he's worked with Bud Selig and has been Bud's right-hand man for a long time. And how much out-of-the-box thinking are we going to see from Rob Manfred, the current Major League Commissioner, or is it going to be Bud Selig picking the guy that is going to stick to the values that Bud himself had for all these years as the Commissioner of Baseball? So I think it's just going to be interesting on a topic-by-topic basis where Manfred comes down, on what side of the table he comes down on. Is it going to be what we would have expected from Bud Selig, or are we going to see a younger Rob Manfred kind of change the game a little bit?
Well, that's an interesting point, and I think the fact that he's going to stick with the DH or doesn't, or no DH in the National League, he may tend to stick with the side of Selig. Kevin and Chris, quickly on this, does baseball need to change some things, though, to improve the game and get younger kids involved in this thing? And you know, you look at the NBA Finals, obviously football. Do they have to do something to change? Chris, we'll go with you first, and then Kevin.
Go to Kevin first on this one.
Well, Chris, it's hard when you talk about tweaking America's pastime, but I do think there's ways to improve it subtly. Speed of play is always an issue, and I know they've kind of addressed that. Fans don't want to sit at the ballpark for 4.5 hours. Maybe modernizing certain things. I watched Chris Rock do a little riff on baseball and how it used to be a lot bigger, and the bottom line is, minorities aren't, American minorities aren't really playing baseball anymore. It doesn't appeal to them. They think it moves too slow. It's old-fashioned. So maybe trying to find some ways to modernize it and appeal to a wider base of players would be good. But the game itself, the root of it, you're never going to hear me say a bad word about the game of baseball.
All right, Kevin gets credit for the hold, and now to close things out, we go to Leffler.
Well, as my wife says, she'd rather watch paint dry than watch a baseball game. I just like he said, kind of like to make it more interesting, more viewable to more people, and females, maybe one of them, and I'd like to have my wife go to a game with me and actually enjoy the game and not sit there at the first inning and say, all right, I'm bored. So yeah, I think getting it to open up to other people would be a good idea for the game.
My wife's always like, "Oh, Bryce Harper, he's pretty good looking. How about that?" I'm like, "Oh, great."
Yeah, right.
I gotta be honest with you guys. I get bored at baseball games right now because they do take too long, and I'm sick and tired of seeing guys like Ryan Braun and Jonathan Lucroy undo their each batting glove every pitch and reattach them. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about that takes so much time. And to me, I would agree, Chris, your wife, she's right on the money. I think they are losing the average fan in terms of the excitement of the game. And if they want to make things more interesting, I think just sticking to the speed-up rules, which they've kind of, they started with and they've kind of backed out of, and we'll see what they do moving forward. But I think they need to stick hardcore to whatever speed-up rules they apply in the game, because without it, I think young kids are going to find a different sport.
I think we're going to have to speed up Bill's internet connection there. Kind of a little bit there. Speed that up along with baseball. Well, listen, good points. We're not going to solve all the issues for baseball, but great ideas. And our first installment of the Sports Directors is complete. Who knows when we'll have part 2? Maybe we'll get our other counterparts along from Minnesota and Iowa and Nebraska. But thanks for watching us, and we'll talk to you again real soon.